This is the story of creamed chipped beef on toast, a dish that carried American soldiers through 2 world wars, fed families through the Great Depression, and quietly slipped off most diner menus within a single generation. If you grew up eating it, or you watched your father push it around his plate with a look that said everything about where he had been, this one is for you. Most folks today know it, when they know it at all, by its military nickname, SOS. The polite translations run along the lines of "same old stuff," "save our stomachs," and "something on a shingle." And the honest one, the version the men themselves used, you can probably fill in on your own. The word shingle entered Army slang around 1935, because mess hall toast often came out so hard and square it genuinely resembled a piece of roofing. Lay a scoop of lumpy, grayish-white gravy across the top of it, and the name wrote itself. Before we reach the mess halls, though, we need to travel further back, because this dish did not begin in the Army. It began in a PA kitchen. The earliest printed recipe anyone has found appears in a community cookbook titled the UP To Date Cookbook, published in 1897 for St. John's Church in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, which puts the recipe on paper 13 years before the Army ever wrote it down. Among the Pennsylvania Dutch, it carried a different name, frizzled beef, or Dutch frizzled beef, because of the way the dried beef curls and crisps when you sear it in butter before the cream joins the pan. German meat-curing knowledge traveled with the Pennsylvania Dutch when they settled in the 17th and 18th centuries. Back home in Germany, the smokehouse favored pork, but in Pennsylvania beef proved more available, and those same curing techniques turned onto a new animal. That shift is where dried beef, as Americans know, it really begins. Founded by Edward W. Knauss in Quakertown, Pennsylvania in 1902, Knauss Foods still produces dried beef at the same Broad Street facility today, using a recipe that has passed its 120th birthday. Down in Baltimore, William Schluterberg had been curing dried beef under what became the East-K name since 1858, and Philadelphia's Carson's Packing Company opened its doors in 1888. This was the heartland of American dried beef, and it still is. Dried beef itself, of course, reaches back much further than any of these companies. Native Americans taught European settlers how to cut meat into strips and dry it for preservation. And cowboys and pioneers carried salted, dried beef across the country because it required no refrigerator and no kitchen. A camp cook would simmer the meat in water to pull out some of the salt, thicken up the liquid, and what landed on the plate was the rough outline of what would one day become SOS. What turned that campfire stretch meal into a proper dish was the addition of a French white sauce. The cream gravy in creamed chipped beef is, technically speaking, a béchamel, one of the 5 mother sauces of classical French cooking, first developed in the 17th century. That tends to surprise people. This humble, much maligned breakfast rests on the bones of haute cuisine, with butter and flour cooked into a roux, milk whisked in slow pepper for seasoning, and the paper-thin beef folded through at the end. That is the whole thing. That simplicity is exactly why the dish became what it became. When the Great Depression arrived in 1929, creamed chipped beef was already waiting. Dried beef ranked among the cheapest meat products in America, required no refrigeration, and could sit in a pantry for months, which meant families without an icebox could still keep protein on hand. A single small jar carried enough flavor to stretch a gravy across a whole family, and the toast and potatoes piled underneath it cost even less. At the bottom of the Depression, 100 pounds of potatoes came to $1. For a lot of households, creamed chipped beef on toast was not a quirky throwback. It was Tuesday night. It was how you kept the children fed. Those little glass jars the dried beef came in. Armor, Hormone, the small ones with the pop-off lids. Most of you know exactly which jars I mean. Mothers washed them out and kept them as juice glasses, and toddlers learning to drink from something other than a cup got handed one of those jars. They held up well. They did not break easy, and every family seemed to own a cupboard full of them. That is a memory a lot of you share, whether you realized it or not. War arrived, and SOS went from a home dish to a national institution. The Army had actually written the recipe down long before. Back in 1910, the Manual for Army Cooks published recipe number 251, stewed chipped beef with cream sauce served on toast, scaled to feed 60 men, calling for 15 pounds of chipped beef, flour browned in fat, evaporated milk, beef stock, parsley, and pepper. That recipe, more or less unchanged, fed the doughboys of World War I. World War II made SOS famous. Around 16 million Americans served, and nearly every one of them met this dish across a mess hall steam tray. In August of 1944, the Army issued a revised recipe in Technical Manual 10-412, cleaner, creamier, no more parsley, no more beef stock, just chipped beef, cream sauce, and toast. Jerry Stearns of the 89th Infantry Division admitted he was uneasy about trying it at first, and that's when, at 3 or 4 o'clock one morning, he wandered into the mess and watched the cooks pull it together, mounds of meat, milk, and flour sauce coming together in the pan, hundreds of slices of bread moving through the toaster. His words were, "I became an instant fan." Stephen Ambrose recorded that Easy Company of the 101st Airborne, the band of brothers, received creamed chipped beef on toast in Kentucky as what seemed to be the Army's meal of choice for troops in the field. The Navy, being the Navy, had to do things differently. Their version called for minced ground beef in a tomato sauce flavored with onion and nutmeg, thickened with cornstarch. And if you search Navy cookbooks from 1927 to 1952, you will not find a cream sauce recipe at all. One ship's crew grew so upset at being served the Army-style chipped beef version that they convinced the cooks to only serve it once a year. After the war, veterans came home, and the dish traveled with them. Through the late 1940s, food was still rationed, and SOS held its place on the table. Some men could not stand the sight of it ever again because it tasted too much like where they had been, and others cooked it for their wives and children exactly the way they remembered it. This is the split a lot of you lived through as kids. The father who refused to touch it, the mother who only made it when he was out of town. Or the reverse, the dad who loved it, cooked it on Saturday mornings, and handed that love right down to you. The dish stayed on military menus through Korea and Vietnam. Dennis Peterson, who served with an Air Force tactical fighter squadron in the Vietnam era, called it good eating. A Navy cook aboard the USS California in 1974 fed 450 men 3 times a day at sea. And he remembered SOS as a crew favorite. The recipe still lives in the Armed Forces Recipe Service today. Recipe card L05200 for chipped beef, L030 for the ground beef version, distributed by the Joint Culinary Center of Excellence at Fort Gregg Adams in Virginia. When veteran groups visit military bases, they are sometimes served the dish built from that same 1944 Army recipe book. On the civilian side, the dish put down its deepest roots in mid-Atlantic diners across Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware. Many of those diners belonged to Greek-American families who kept the traditional American menu alive long after the chains moved on to something else. Founded in 1959 and now run by 3 Greek-American brothers across 8 locations, Maryland's Double T Diner still serves creamed chipped beef over toast with home fries. At the Perry Hall location, it lands as the #2 most loved item on the menu, carrying a 94% approval rating. In the coal region of Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, and in Pennsylvania Dutch country farmers markets, you can still find it, provided you know where to look. The national footprint, though, has mostly vanished. IHOP used to serve it. Cracker Barrel used to serve it. Both chains quietly replaced it with sausage gravy. The Banquet frozen boil in bag version disappeared years ago. And while Stouffer's kept their frozen version on the roster even when they dropped Welsh Rarebit in 2021, longtime customers will tell you the switch from boil in bag to plastic tray around 2020 changed the texture. And not for the better. As for the dried beef itself, the cheapest meal in America has transformed into one of the most expensive breakfast meats you can buy, pound for pound. The old thrift dish is not thrift anymore. Folks in Oregon, in upstate New York, in New Mexico, write in to say they cannot find real dried beef on the shelf at all. That is where we stand. A dish born in a Pennsylvania church cookbook, carried through the Depression on the backs of families who had almost nothing, turned into the defining meal of the American mess hall, brought home in millions of duffel bags, and now quietly slipping off the menu one diner at a time. The men and women who first ate it remember it best, and every year there are fewer of them at the table. I would like to hear from you. Did your father cook it, or refuse to touch it? Did your mother keep those little jars as juice glasses? Is there a diner near you that still serves it the right way, over plain white toast cooked almost to a plank, with plenty of pepper ground on top? Leave a comment, and tell me about the person you picture when you smell cream gravy coming off the stove. These stories are what keep the dish alive, and they are the whole reason this channel exists. Until next time, take care of each other, and do not let the good ones be forgotten.